back, witches, and welcome to May. Before we dive into all things May, we are going to go over my April reading recap. And yes, I am in long sleeves today. I am filming this on the Monday before you're watching it, and it is 45 degrees right now, and tomorrow it's going to be 70. So that's super fun, living in the Midwest. So I have here my Always Fully Booked planner by Little Inklings Designs, and I will have their shop linked down below, but this is what I use to track all of my reading and reading stats. So I'm going to go over the Witchcraft reads and then get into the fiction reads. So Witchcraft books without much to say about, because you already heard from them on the podcast: Celtic, Hedge, Witchery by Joey Morris, Tarot, Timeless Secrets of the Ancient Mirror by Natalie Labriola, and The Night House by Danielle Dulski. That was just on. So I know that you have heard from all of those and know all about the books. And then the fourth one is Ask Your Spirit by Christine Lang, which is a great book about getting in touch with your intuition, and that is coming out soon, and she will also be on the podcast soon. We have already recorded it, and that episode will be coming up, but we are scheduling it to go live closer to the publication date of the book. So those were my 4 witchy reads. Let's start the fiction reads with my DNFs for the month. There were 3 of them. I didn't have any in March, but I did have 3 this month because this year, if I'm not into it, it's gotta go. I have too many things on my TBR to waste time on anything that's not working. And all 3 of these were on my TBR, and I started them, realized that they're not for me, and immediately took them off and just did a DNF. So at least they are not lingering on the TBR. First up was Gilded Hero, that is available on Kindle Unlimited. And I think I like the storyline, but it was the writing style that just wasn't for me. It is very much like The Boys, if you've watched that on Amazon, where we have morally gray or downright awful superheroes, and we are following our main character who is working with maybe one of the good ones. But I just could not get into the story. I think it needs editing. I really just came down to the writing style was not for me. I also DNF'd Blood of the Sands. This is first person present, and I do not generally like that. And I usually won't read books that have that. Sometimes I do, I will, if I'm getting into the story, I will get over it. But when a book starts that way, I kind of know that it's not going to be for me. And this one was way too info dumpy, way too quickly. So I was not getting anything out of the story. And I was like, okay, it's first person present does not work for me. Also too info dumpy. And it had 2 point of view characters, and they sounded exactly the same. So I was like, I don't even know whose POV I'm reading. I mean, I do from the title of the chapter, but it was just not for me. And the last DNF was Reign and Ruin, which I do think is quite popular, but again, wasn't for me. I am tired of, I might just be out of my romantasy era, which I think you'll see with my reads in April and then going into the start of May. And I am definitely not bothering with any more mediocre romantasies, which I think a lot of them are like that now, or coming out like that now, because it is such a popular genre at the moment, and a lot of people are reading it. So publishers are wanting to do more of those to sell more books, obviously. But I am just not, they need to be great. I am so tired of mediocre ones. And that's what I felt like Reign and Ruin was. It was boring from the start. I got a good way into it, and I was just bored the whole time. And it's too prosy. I didn't like the writing style of this either. Those are my 3 DNFs. And let's get into the ones that I stuck with, because it was mostly 4 stars across the board throughout the entire month, which is really good. So overall in April, I read 14 books. My average rating was a 3.78, and my total page numbers read was 6,472. So let's start with everything that I gave 4 stars and 1 5-star, because I don't have a lot to say about it. It was a reread. I am rereading the Throne of Glass series. I've always said, I have read all the Sarah J. Maas, and I have always own it. It's all around here someplace. I have always said that Throne of Glass is my favorite. However, it's the one that I read first and have not reread. So I read Throne of Glass, I read ACOTAR, I read Crescent City, I reread ACOTAR, and I reread Crescent City before the 3rd one came out. So I read and reread both of those in the time since I've read Throne of Glass. I've never gone back and reread that one. And I decided that this was the time to see if it stands up to still being my favorite. ACOTAR is at the bottom. I'm sorry, ACOTAR fans, but I like Crescent City better. And I have read 5 out of the 8 books of Throne of Glass, and it is still seeming to hold that #1 spot. So this month I read Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and Queen of Shadows. The first 4, which is like the first 3 books and the prequel, I gave 4 stars, and then Queen of Shadows I gave 5 stars. That's my favorite one. So it still holds up. I still love it. Not a lot to say about that. I mean, it's been out for a while, and I think everybody's like read it and talked about it, so not too much to say there, but I am enjoying the reread process of it, and hopefully I will get through the next 3 books this month of May. Going to run through them in no particular order other than what I have to say about them. So the ones that I have less to say about, we're going to start with those. Starting with a prime read, The Whispers of Evernow by Heidi Catherine, which I just gave a 3-star because it was truly mid. And based on what I gave 2 stars this month, I think you'll be surprised that I gave this one 3, but it was like fine. I actually read through it really quickly because there's a lot of promise in the world building, but the writing is super stilted. But I read so quickly. I think it was only like 200 and something pages, 274. So I sped through it, you know, in an evening, just wanted to find out what happened. But the premise was super interesting because we are following a character who gets taken to the palace by the king because he has these special abilities to be one of the whisperers. And the king gathers like these 1,000 people who have this power. We don't know how it happens. But the king will give them a directive and they all like whisper it together. And when they do, whatever the king wanted comes true. So some interesting, like fun magic. And you're trying to figure out how it happens because there's not really like magic. Nobody else has this power. It's just these specific people. And the king, of course, is evil. So I don't know if this was like first draft, first book, but that's kind of like how it read because there just wasn't a lot in like character development. Like I said, the king is evil. He's like, there's no like story there. He's like the stereotypical like villain, most villain to ever villain. And the good characters are all good. There's no like twist or anything in there. And there's no like character development. So that's why it's like reads like first book, first draft. It's just very stilted in the writing. But the world is really cool. And I wanted to like know more about that. So that's why I gave it a 3 because I just read it so fast and it wasn't a DNF or like put it down. So I was like, oh, truly a mid book. I gave 4 stars to The Spy Coast by Tess Gerritsen. So this was a recommendation from one of my patrons when I said last month I read the Thursday Murder Club and I really enjoyed that. I loved the retirees, just like solving murders, very British dry humor. And this was in the same vein, not British, but it is retiree spies living in Maine and they are solving murders and crimes as well. This directly affects our main character, Maggie, like a dead body is dumped at her doorstep. So these retiree spies are in this small town in Maine trying to solve this murder. And it is available on Kindle Unlimited. So I do recommend it. Like I had a great time with it. Something about the retirees, I just love that. So I did give that 4 stars. So I thank my patron for recommending that. And then spoiler alert, I already read the second one on like the first day of May. So you'll see it in next month's recap. And I gave that one 4 stars as well. That one is less directly following. It's like still following the same cast, but the murder and plot that happens in that one is not as directly related to their lives. They're just helping to solve the crime. So both of them I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed that. I gave 4 stars to my first read of the month, which was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Again, not a lot to say about that because I know that has been out since 2020 and is very popular. It has been on my TBR for a while. Wanted to check that off. It's very cute, just wasn't a 5-star read for me. I know a lot of people love it. Again, one of those is like very British in the writing and it was super cozy. A sweet read. I don't know that I'm in a hurry to read the second one, but I am glad that I finally did read this one. On to a couple arcs that I gave 4 stars to. The first, or at least like first that is in order of coming out, is The Heretic Cypher by Marie Bailey. It is a mystery thriller that is coming out on July 25th. And I do believe it is part of something that was like already published in some way, but they are like taking that apart and like making it into its own like series and books here. So this is a fast-paced, very much Da Vinci Code, National Treasure coded, and that is one of my favorite types of stories to read. So I enjoyed it. It really was just like exactly like those 2 movies combined, but make it Egyptian. So we're following the main character, Alex, who is investigating unwillingly the murder of his friend. They were both Egyptologists, and it seems like she discovered something and was killed for it and left him clues along the way. So he is trying to figure out what happened and who is guilty. And I like the fast-paced nature of the story. Obviously, I like that type of story and topic. Not a 5-star because the main character is like a way too gullible, like trusting man. Throughout the entire book, so it's not even like giving away any spoilers. There's multiple times in the book where he is way too gullible and trusting, even with people who have already proven to be untrustworthy. It's like, why do you keep giving them chances? This is crazy. So that was annoying. I also gave 4 stars to another arc that is coming out in November 18th. That is 59 Minutes by Holly Seddon. This is another thriller, so I think I'm just in my like mystery thriller era, and mediocre romantasy is done. So this was fast-paced. It was a creepy concept. The only reason it didn't get 5 stars is because I didn't totally love the twist and like final ending, but overall it was good and kept me hooked. So the concept behind the 59 minutes is that we are in London, areas right outside of London, and we are following 3 main characters as they get an alert that there is an incoming nuclear missile that will hit in 59 minutes. So everybody gets in Great Britain is getting these alerts on their phone, and they are following 3 characters that are like having this life like trapped where they are and are trying to get somewhere, get to their people, get supplies, and just like how they navigate. Like, what would you do in this situation if you had 59 minutes and you knew something that was coming, that like no matter where it hits, it's going to devastate the entire area. There's going to be nuclear fallout for years. What are you even going to try to do? And it does show that with like some of the side characters, they do, you know, pass people on the street who opt to take their own lives instead of trying to live through that. Most people are trying to get home to their families, but there are some that are trying to get supplies and looting and robbing because they do want to make it through the nuclear apocalypse. So it was a super creepy concept. And I liked the characters and getting through it. And there was a big twist towards the end with like one of the characters and like figuring out like, you know, they all tie together, that I did not see coming at all. So that was fun. But yeah, there's just like a part of the ending that I was like, that's keeping it from 5 stars. I don't like that. I mentioned I was going to be reading this one, and I gave 4 stars to Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is one of her ones that are like set in relatively recent decades, which is like the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Carrie Soto. There is one that is coming out soon called Atmosphere, and I am looking forward to reading that one. Malibu Rising was the only one that I had not read in that sort of line of work. In that series, you don't have to read them all together or read them in like a particular order. We do get Carrie Soto citing in this one, so they will sometimes have something that like ties together, but not always. So you can read any one of them, any order. I do still think Evelyn Hugo is my favorite. I did also love Carrie Soto, and I didn't think like just like based on the concept that I was going to love Malibu Rising as much, but I did. Something just about Taylor Jenkins Reid writing, I really love her. This one was interesting because she writes relatable characters, but also like truly hateable characters. There's like a couple in here that I'm like, I hate you. You're horrible. So that was interesting. We are following 4 siblings who, it's basically following this end of the year like party that they throw in Malibu. They are rich off their own resources, although they do have a famous father, and our flashbacks go through like the relationship that their father went through with their mother, who is no longer with us, and his terrible relationship with his 4 kids, and how that progressed to where we are today, to them throwing this party that we know ends in a devastating wildfire, but we don't know who started it or anything that happens. You get it in like the very first page that there's this wildfire that's sweeping through, and then you go back and get the whole story of the entire party up until, you know, the fire happens. And I feel like I don't usually like books that are just focused on relationships and not so much plot, but Taylor Jenkins Reid does it so well that I just end up loving it. So next up, usually I'm not a horror person until October, really. That's sort of like my horror genre month. But this was fantasy horror, and it was on my list. Ended up checking it out from the library, and that is The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins, and I did give this one 4 stars. It is older. It did come out in 2015, but I think it's got like a resurgence in popularity. Sorry if the camera moved. My brother-in-law's dog is here today, and he is a big dog who thinks he's a little dog and just knocked everything over. And so here we are going again. So as I was saying, I think that this book has gotten a resurgence in popularity, even though it came out 10 years ago, because I've been seeing it a lot of places and I just really wanted to try it. And it is fantasy horror, but the entire thing just reads like a nightmare. And yet I really loved it. So I gave it 4 stars because there are parts about dogs that I hated. So that kept it, and there were some dark academia parts that kept it from getting a 5 stars, because that's just not for me. Those parts, like, just my eyes glaze over. I'm like, I don't want to read this. But other than that, it was a 4 star. So we are following the main character of Carolyn, and she lives with her adoptive father and all these adopted siblings. And without ever saying the words, the book makes it very clear that her father is the devil, and she and her siblings are each learning about one little section of his powers. He's not going to teach all of his powers to one person, because obviously they'll overthrow him. So he goes missing, and the siblings are trying to find him, because without him, they're locked out of their house, and they're trying to figure out what happened, where he is, and they cannot get back into their house without, if they start dying if they step onto the property. But he's awful to them, no love lost. So Carolyn's like, do we really want to find him? Because he's kind of terrible. And honestly, so are most of my siblings. So it has some like flashbacks of like how they came to be adopted, and there are, lessons along the way. So like I said, the entire thing reads like a nightmare. And yet for some reason, I loved it. On to my last 2, which are going to be my least popular opinions probably ever. And these are my lowest rating of the month. So let's start with the one that I gave 3 stars, because again, mid-book, and that is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. This is an older one, 2001. They have made a television series. I have not watched it. I actually did not even know it existed until I went to go track it on my reading tracker, and it was like, they say like in the little caption, they're like, oh, made into hit TV series. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. This is fantasy. It's incredibly popular, and I do love the concept because it has gods and mythology. It's like adult Percy Jackson. So we're following this main character, Shadow, who just gets out of prison and is immediately tapped by one of the gods to work for him and do his bidding. So I like that concept. And we don't just see the god that taps him is Norse pantheon, but we don't just see Norse pantheon. We get tons of gods and mythology from across different pantheons. That's kind of the point. And I love to see that interaction and that explanation. Love that parts of it, but the plot overall is mid. Some of it's too weird, very fever dream, which is fine. I like reading that sometimes, but it meanders like crazy. This was 750 pages of like not a lot happening. And then we get to the climax and it's a total letdown. I won't say any spoilers about it, but we're building up to what is supposed to be this climax, and then it's over in a couple of pages, and it's just like a very basic reasoning of why and how it ends. It's like, that's that, we did all of that to get to that. So yeah, that just it was not for me. I know that this one is beloved, but only okay. My last read of the month, which I gave 2 stars, and everybody's going to hate me for this, but I do not care. That is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Everybody loves this one and thinks it's one of Brandon Sanderson's best works, and I'm sorry, but it's not. I don't like it. It is overwritten. It absolutely is. This is over 1,000 pages of nothing. I was so bored. I don't know how you can be bored in a Brandon Sanderson book, but so bored. And I love fantasy. I love epic fantasy. It's my favorite genre. But this was absolutely so boring. We are following 3 main characters, Dalinar, Kaladin, and Shallan. Shallan, unfortunately, it has like one of the most interesting storylines, and it does not get good until like the last 100 pages. That's crazy. And I mean, everybody says that, they're like, oh, you just have to get through 800 pages and then it gets so good. And I'm like, why do I have to slog through 800 pages to get to that? And then there's like 4 books right now out in the series, maybe another one coming, that are all equally as longer. And I understand like the world building setup to get to all of those books, but you should not have to get through 800 pages before a book gets good. So the beginning of Shallan's storyline was just lost, and she became a great character at the end, but like all of her chapters until then, I was like, so bored. This is pointless. Dalinar, we don't see much of. So Kaladin was the only one that had, a lot of chapters that were interesting, like following his storyline along. We do jump back and forth in time with both Kaladin and Dalinar. Kind of important to the story, but can be like slightly confusing. But overall, my problem was just that it's super repetitive. And I have heard from other people that they liked that because they do not sit down and read 1,200 pages of a book in 2 or 3 days like I do, which is fair. They will read it over the course of however long it takes a normal person to read 1,000 pages. So they like the repetitiveness and they like the reminders of kind of like what happened and like why something is important. But for me, I felt like the repetitiveness came on the same page, like, or within like a couple of paragraphs, because we would get something that was like, this storm is approaching. Look at this color. This is so, important. Must be something bad is coming. A couple paragraphs later, we get a character that says, oh, there's a storm coming. This is, bad tidings, herald of bad things to come. It's like, you just told me that. And it read like 700 pages of that. It's like, we are repeating things. And then there's so much. I love description and world building, but this one had like so many things that like seemingly did not matter. And they might matter in future books, but I was so bored that I'm not going to read those future books and I'm not going to find out if those things ever matter. So that's it. Just bored. That it could have been cut in half at least and had the same effect. So I know that is a wildly unpopular opinion. I know people particularly love that one, but there's so much Brandon Sanderson that I would rather read. This is not it, and I will not be continuing in that series. But that is a big chunk to get off of my TBR because, like I said, the books only get longer, and I will not be partaking in that. So those are all my reads for the month, ending on that note. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Any Sanderson fans, feel free to sound off in the comments because I know that you're all gonna hate me and tell me that I didn't understand. I did understand, it's just boring. And let me know how you feel about all of these books. If you've read any of them, have similar feelings, or feel completely the opposite, I definitely want to know. Hey, and as we are heading into May, definitely let me know what you are looking forward to reading, what's on your TBR, anything that I should add to mine based on my feelings about what I read in April. Like I said, loving the mystery thriller genre right now, maybe even horror, and not so much those mid fantasy romance. Speaking of not mid fantasy romance, I know that Silver Elite comes out on May 6th. I had already reviewed this previously because I got an arc for it, I think last year sometime. If I can figure out where that video is, I will definitely link it, but no promises. But Silver Elite by Danny Francis, I think is going to be a very popular one. I think I gave it 4 stars when I read it. Very Divergent coded, but I think a lot of people are going to like that. A lot of people like that dystopian YA fantasy romance genre. Reminds us of our childhood and the books we grew up reading. So I do recommend that one. I will also be continuing in the Throne of Glass series, hopefully finishing out those last 3 books this month. And I am also going to dive into the continuation of the Red Rising series. There was the original trilogy, and then 3 more books came out and a 4th one is coming. I think that's where we're at. And I am going to start reading those, starting with Iron Gold. That's the next one. But other than that, I am not sure what is on the agenda for me for May. So if you have any recommendations to share, please do, especially on Kindle Unlimited. I did one of those deals where they have like however many months free. And I think I got 3 months for like 99 cents or something. So I was like, let's do it. So I have that until like the first week of July. So let's do some Kindle Unlimited. If you have any more recommendations over there, do let me know. That is everything that I have for my April reads. So I will see you next week.